Oh man, I just could not get into Twisters, and I really tried. I was excited about this movie, as I know many of you are. It's supposed to be the summer blockbuster, right? We've all been so looking forward to it. In fact, I told a friend of mine I was going to this screening, and she was like, "You better like Twisters, Grace. You know, everyone is excited. It's going to be a fun summer popcorn movie. You know, get on board." And again, I really tried to like it, but I think it's got a lot of problems. So we'll see how everybody decide. I mean, the Rotten Tomatoes score has been like moderate. It's gone up a little bit over the past, 24, 48 hours from when we talked about it on Movie Math. So we'll see where the overall audience lands on this. But I can't in good conscience not tell you about all the flaws in the movie. But don't worry, this is a non-spoiler review. All right, so I really liked the original Twisters. I think especially the more you watch it, it's really a fun film. I watched it during the pandemic again. I watched it again a couple of weeks ago to get ready for this new film. And in fact, I also have fond memories of the Twister Universal Studios experience. It wasn't an actual ride, but the experience at the theme park, as I know many of you do. And it is a good brand. And when it came out, the original film back in 1996, extremely successful movie. So it's interesting that, people don't talk about it too much before the sequel was coming along. And it took them so long to do a sequel. Man, I wish it were better. Now, the soundtrack is good. I will agree. The soundtrack is good. And Glen Powell, top form. He does have that movie star charm. I haven't loved some of his interviews that he's been doing lately, but when I saw him on screen here, I was like, he does have that it factor. I do like Glen Powell quite a bit, particularly on screen. You might want to dial back the interviews, but he continues to be extremely charismatic up on the silver screen. But he's unfortunately not the star or even the co-star of the movie. I wish this film had more Glen Powell in it. And I also, because he's really just Daisy Edgar-Jones' love interest. And also the film lacks, in my opinion, heart and warmth. Substantially, in a significant way. It's missing that Spielbergian Michael Crichton quality that the first one had. Let's talk about it. So in the original 1996 film, Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton were co-stars. And the whole idea was that for their tornado team to truly work, it needed to have both of them. They were both vital to the success of that team. However, in 2024's Twisters, a reporter writing a story about Powell's tornado hunters literally says, "Sorry, Powell, but Edgar-Jones' Kate is the real story." And that's how the movie feels as well. That's how the movie feels itself. She's the tornado whisperer, caught in a love triangle, a very one-sided love triangle between Powell and Anthony Ramos. Poor Ramos. His Javi doesn't stand a chance as written. You're like, no, it's in some cases, it's tough to watch because Anthony Ramos is so likable. You're like, don't do my boy like that. And how, by the way, is Kate not the daughter of Hunt and Paxton's characters or at all related to them? Why bring in Maura Tierney as her mom when Helen Hunt is right there? She's still working. She's currently just finished doing a pretty good guest spot in Hacks Season 3. Tragically, Bill Paxton, one of the nicest guys ever in Hollywood. I got the chance, I never got to air it, but I did interview him at his last Comic-Con. And I'd heard that he was a wonderful person, and he really was. I'll never forget meeting him. He was just, I cannot express what a kind and wonderful and generous person that he was. And he passed away in 2017. But, Helen Hunt could have come back, and it would have been nice to have like a picture of Bill Paxton here somehow, some kind of nod to him. How did Kate's team get Dorothy? If there's no callback to the team that created that technology, they're like, here's Dorothy. And you're like, where'd you get that? And they're like, it doesn't matter. And Dorothy's really the only major callback to the original film, which is iconic for many of its moments, like the cow. They do mention cows, but no way in a callback kind of way to the first film. There's no rolling house, which was also iconic. And then even that scene where the pickets in the fence get ripped up in the air, they didn't have anything like that, like really visceral. Like they had something kind of similar with windmills, but then they didn't do anything with it. You know, you're like, oh, are those going to start flying everywhere? And they're like, not really. And you're like, oh, then why do we have them here? The original movie was almost non-stop tornado hunting and wrangling, with its few emotional scenes played out like in the middle of all that. They'd be like, we better hurry up with this emotional dump of exposition or whatever, because there'd be a tornado coming, and they'd be covered in rain, and the wind was going left and right, and they'd be like, this is how I feel. And you were like, ooh, so it was really good. But here, like the movie stops to talk science or romance or both. And you're like, oh, aren't we hunting tornadoes? And it kind of takes the focus off of tornadoes. Instead of like, the first movie was just like tornadoes all the time. Twisters, weirdly, is more tell than show. In 2024, when they have, more advanced visual effects, which actually look worse than the 1996 film. We'll talk about that. But it's bizarre that they would be like, oh yeah, we'll get to the tornadoes. And you're like, dude, that's why I'm here. Joseph Kosinski, who was originally going to direct this film and came up with the story, is a very strong visual director. Top Gun Maverick, thank you, sir. But he's not a good story guy, as you probably remember from Tron Legacy. The reason Top Gun Maverick was good was that it was saved by Christopher McQuarrie, who came in and did a rewrite on the script and particularly added that crazy third act. Now, in the original Twisters movie, it was a B-movie version of Jurassic Park, which was why it worked so well. Reteaming Michael Crichton's very strong storytelling sensibilities with Spielbergian Americana, in that case, courtesy of Jan de Bont, who did a pretty good Spielberg approximation. The original Twister also had a warm color palette and an idealized American heartland. In contrast, Twisters has a very cool color palette. If I was the producer, I'd take these two stills and I'd show them to the creative team on Twisters, and I'd be like, what are you doing? And a bleak look at today's American heartland. I was like, who wants that, man? This is supposed to be a movie that's celebrating the American heartland, not reminding them how horrible it is there right now. For instance, a woman goes full Karen during a tornado attack and really sucks a lot of the fun out of that whole scene. Another good example is the drive-in versus the movie theater. The Rodeo was really supposed to be the drive-in in this movie, but, I want to do movie to movie. All right, so again, don't worry, no spoilers. Now, the drive-in featured in the original film was depicted in a way that you really felt that you were there and that it was a really cozy place to go to the movies. You were like, wow, if a tornado wasn't about to hit, I'd love to go to this drive-in. And you really get a good feel for the snack stand and the teenagers who work there. It was great. But the movie theater here, they just say, quick, let's run into the movie theater. And you don't see the lobby or the concession stand or anyone who works there or anyone who was in the middle of watching a movie. They're playing a really old movie. They're playing the original Frankenstein. Now, in the drive-in, they were also playing an older film, The Shining, right? Again, it's also having to do with the studio that's distributing the movie at the time, etc. But it was interesting in The Shining because you have a supernatural killer giving way to a real killer, the tornado. So that worked. But why Frankenstein? So I think maybe that's supposed to be a reference to the fact that Kate's scientific experiment to tame tornadoes is perhaps irresponsible. Is she a mad scientist herself? I kind of thought that she was. I didn't think the movie took the situation very seriously, so it's interesting to me that they chose Frankenstein as the movie. Is that the one place they were making the commentary? Because she seems to have absolutely no state or federal oversight. No oversight whatsoever, yet here she is dumping massive amounts of chemicals into the environment. Like, so let's see if we can stop a tornado in its tracks. And you're like, what's in those canisters? Is there a problem for everybody who's going to breathe the air afterwards? Like, where does that stuff go? What's in it again? I was concerned. Are those chemicals dangerous? What is the effect after they get sucked up? Long term. And since we know so little about tornadoes, by the way, is there maybe a reason that they exist that we maybe haven't figured out? If you were to get rid of tornadoes, would that maybe cause an unexpected problem? I was concerned. It was one of the many things that took me out of the film, but I was like, I don't know if you can do that. I mean, in the original film, they just wanted to study tornadoes to get a better understanding of how to predict and track them. Here, you're like, whoa, I have questions. Also, by raising the stakes so intently in other ways, Kate is haunted by an earlier incident from her past, which we see. It's even harder to understand, so I appreciated that. That was show, not tell. But it's even harder as the movie progresses to understand why all of our tornado hunters are willing to have so many close calls. You're like, dude, you almost died again. What are we doing here now? And why also in the middle of tornado country in 2024, there are still so few storm shelters. You're like, every year, I looked it up, by the way. I was like, how deadly are tornadoes? And about 80 people a year die from tornadoes. And you're like, maybe you guys should build some more tornado shelters. And also, why are hardly any buildings built to withstand a tornado? Like, for instance, in California, most buildings that are built today are built to at least try to withstand earthquakes. So in Middle America, is it a money issue? Like, what is going on here? And if the film is going to dig into the science, then they have to dig into the other areas too. Once you start explaining stuff or some stuff, you got to explain all this stuff. So it was just weird. They were like, there's no basement in all of town. And you're like, why not? It was just really bizarre. Also, all the tornado hunters kept being like, we got to go help the people, which was very admirable. But you're like, what about the first responders who are qualified to go and help the people? Where are they? You know, like there was, it just, you know, there was just a lot of, so many times I was watching the movie and instead of my being like in the film, like, yeah, I was like, I have questions. This doesn't make sense. I don't understand. Now, also, speaking of things not being explained in this movie, I'm already starting to see headlines about why doesn't the movie, again, they opened this door with discussing the science to such a degree. Why doesn't it address climate change? Because is that a bummer and they don't want to get into a political fight? But, you know, Universal has been pretty good at staying out of politics compared to some other studios. But at the same time, you're making a movie about tornadoes, and the whole reason there are more tornadoes these days and they're getting worse is, you know, climate change. So if you're going to talk about the science of tornadoes, how do you not mention that? It's weird. It's weird. Now, not including the environment, which again they sidestep, it is interesting to see how much the world, and specifically America, has changed otherwise since the first film, again, which came out in 1996, to a far more diverse cast. There's almost no diversity in the first film, to a crumbling middle America, to significant advancements in technology, which, by the way, has made the world, of course, as we all know, smaller. But in this case, here they have a group of tourists from all over the world who are chasing tornadoes as well, thanks to apps on their phone and also, of course, Glen Powell's character's YouTube channel. Now, this is only introduced in a blink and you miss it quick scene. They have them basically just getting out of a bus and at a pit stop. But I thought that was fascinating. I was like, the human interest angle to me is far more interesting than the science stuff and the romance, the romance that you guys decided to focus on instead. Like, I'd love to get to know these tourists and what made, you know, they have like some tourists from Asia. What made them come all the way over from Asia to chase tornadoes? I mean, that to me, I just thought that would have been a better way to go, the human interest angle. As for the romance, again, as I said, not feeling it. A good love triangle is when you're not sure who the lead is going to pick. And here, as I said, there's no question who Kate is interested in, to the point of, you know, you feel bad, again, as I said, for Anthony Ramos' character. Like, he's just such a likable guy. Like, and it doesn't help Kate's likability as a character that she seems totally oblivious to him liking her. You're like, dude, that guy's crushing on you hardcore. So why don't you let him down easy? And then also, you're like, please don't flirt with Glen Powell right in front of him. Forget the tornadoes. I was so scared that Kate was going to kiss Glen Powell's character right in front of Anthony Ramos. I was like, don't do it. It's so mean. Please don't do that to him. You're just going to break his heart. So that was tough to watch. And Powell, as I said, ends up not being a co-lead, even though he's just oozing mainstream, big star charisma. he's just the love interest for the Kate character. And it's a shame because Anthony Ramos, his role was not good. But Glen Powell, his role was very good. He was just sitting right there. You're like, why isn't he the lead or the co-lead? Now, Powell feels he's the new Tom Cruise. He's going around saying, hey, did you know I'm the new Tom Cruise? And you're like, a lot of us have been like, you might be the new Chris Pratt. And in fact, Universal, he revealed, did offer him the Jurassic franchise, and he turned it down. That's crazy. He would have been great in that. But watching him here, I was like, he doesn't have Chris Pratt's goofiness. I was like, no, not Chris Pratt. So I was watching him, and I came up with, as I tweeted, Kevin Costner. I almost went Clint Eastwood. There might be a little Clint Eastwood in there as well. But he has a warmth that Clint Eastwood doesn't have. He's very Kevin Costner. Not Kevin Costner today. Kevin Costner in his heyday. And you couldn't be a bigger star than Kevin Costner in his heyday. So as Glen Powell picks roles going forward, he should be going after, Kevin Costner's iconic roles. A clean-cut American leading man, hard when he needs to be, but also a softness there as well. And also an intellectual quality. Very Cyclops, by the way. If Kevin Feige's looking for a Cyclops, hopefully he doesn't go for teenagers, Glen Powell would be an excellent Cyclops. Now, I haven't seen any of Daisy Edgar-Jones's other work, so I can't tell if it's her or the material, but she does not pop in this movie. And it certainly doesn't help that she's the Ray of Twisters. Put on a pedestal, we don't see her earn, and therefore also takes her totally out of the group. She's not part of the group. By the way, both are Daisy. Both Daisies are from the UK. And Daisy Ridley, to be fair, really impressed me. I thought she was just wonderful in Young Woman in the Sea, which hits Disney Plus at no extra cost this Friday. Go watch it. So that's a case where even though the Ray role didn't do her any favors, I do think that Daisy Ridley is very charming or can be very charming as an actress in the right project and role. So who knows about Daisy Edgar-Jones beyond this film? But in this film, not good. Edgar-Jones is supposed to be an ex-farm girl who ends up working in New York City for 5 years. So she's supposed to be some weird, talk about Frankenstein, some weird mix of the two. Maybe it's because she's from the UK, although the UK actors are very good at playing Americans, as we know. But she doesn't feel like she's from a farm or from New York City. She's not a farm girl or a New York City career woman, or again, this crazy mix of the two. She just feels like generic female lead. Again, I think the Ray of Twisters is an excellent description. Again, as I said, Anthony Ramos, thankless role, but he does with it what he can. Such a likable guy, such a likable actor. It was tough. The things they put his character through, again, no spoilers, but it was hard to watch. You were like, Anthony Ramos wouldn't do that. All right, as for David Corenswet, who plays his jerk of a business partner, and by the way, he played a jerk very well. He certainly has the physicality of Superman. He towered over everybody else. You were like, who's that huge dude? It's the new Superman. But at least here, he doesn't have the same charisma as Powell or Ramos. Maybe again it was the role, but he just didn't pop like those two guys. It's great to see Brandon Perea, Kiernan Shipka, and Katie O'Brien. They also popped, by the way. But they had very little opportunity to pop. They have very small roles. So you were like, yay, your role is so small. Ireland's Daryl McCormick has a small role, and I was so happy to see him. I loved him on Bad Sisters, but I also get a kick out of the fact that at certain angles, he looks exactly like Zachary Levi. I was like, oh, you need a new Shazam? I found him. But overall, he's a great actor, very likable, and I was so happy to see him on Hollywood's radar. I was glad he got a role here as well. Also, there were protesters at the premiere of Twisters upset about the rodeo featured in the film. And I gotta say, that protesting was effective because it was in my mind when I watched the movie. And then just like with old school zoos, and I've been to a rodeo when I was growing up. I went to one rodeo. But here, knowing what we know now, and I think where we are today, I did feel bad about the rodeo. I did feel it was mean to do to the animals. I was like, pass me one of those rodeo protest signs. This is not cool. I mean, the animals don't know it's a show, and they're scared. They're being roped and ridden against their will. I'm surprised when they were filming it, they weren't like, there's nothing else we could be doing. How about a state fair? Everybody likes a state fair. That's maybe would have been a better choice. And then the animals were so scared when the tornado showed up and there was nobody looking after them. It was not good. All right, finally, the VFX, as I said. Now, obviously, they can't have real tornadoes. I found out on Twitter, if you critique this film's VFX, people are like, what do you want, a real tornado? No, I would like a believable tornado, thank you very much. And in 1996, they did a better job creating tornadoes than they do here in 2024. And I think a big part of the problem is an over-reliance on CGI here. In the original film, it was a wonderful mix of not just CGI, but also practical effects. Really cool. Like I just the other day saw a behind the scenes reel of the actual house they built that could roll for them to drive through. Fantastic. Here today, they're like, why build it? We'll just do all CGI. But you can feel the difference and it doesn't feel real. There's one scene where a water tower is going to fall down and you don't believe it for a second. You're like, oh no, that CGI water tower is going to come. They even had water come down. And I was like, how much of that is real water? You know, I was like, you don't have real stunt people there in a water cannon. It felt just really, like, it felt digitized. It felt fake. It just, you know, it just didn't feel real. It just did, from the tornadoes to a lot of the stuff that happened, it just didn't feel real. The 1996 film felt much more real and visceral. So Twisters, the sequel, is fine. It goes through the motions. But again, it doesn't have the heart, warmth, idealism, excitement, and I'm going to add one, or focus. We're here for Twisters of that original film. So what did you think? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.